So the first reason is because you've never exceeded your car's limits. If you want to have the ultimate confidence going into a corner that you know the car will make it through that corner, the only way to do that is to know which corners the car will not make it through. And the only way to know which corners the car will not make it through is by failing to go around a corner. If you've never got into understeer, oversteer, if your car's never got a little bit out of shape and maybe a little bit uncomfortable, then you can't know what it can do. The best way to resolve this is by doing a track day. A track day is a place where you can safely exceed the limits without being brutally harmed. On a track day, you can get into some tire squeal, you can get into some understeer.
Should be fine. I'm out of line. Oops. Gas.
And if the worst should happen and you lose control of the car, there's a huge amount of runoff on the side of the track for those exact situations. Now, on the road, it's very difficult to exceed limits because, as you can see, on the sides of the road, there is no runoff whatsoever. I don't recommend trying to exceed limits on the road because it can go very wrong. But what you absolutely should do is do a track day and safely exceed those limits so you know what your car is ultimately capable of. And when you do that track day, you will be shocked by just how high the limits actually are, just how much faster you can go before the car gives up grip. If you've never done a track day, make sure you watch this video up here. It is a great guide on how to do your first track day and why you should do a track day. The next point we have is not being in the right gear. If you're not changing gear before a corner and after a corner at the minimum, then you're not driving spiritedly. If you're not constantly trying to be in the top half of the power band, you're not driving spiritedly. I shall demonstrate. We've got some corners coming up. I'm going to get myself to a nice part of the rev band. Now we've got a great response from the engine, and I'm going to use the power through the corner, shift down after, shift back up for the next one, power through, shift up for the next one. This matters more and more the less and less power you have. So if you're trying to keep up with your friends that have faster cars, more powerful cars, this will make the biggest difference. You've got to try and extract as much power as you can from your engine. And since engines make more power, the higher up the rev band, you've got to get into the higher revs. If you want to learn more about getting the most out of your engine, click this video up here. Another issue people really have when spirited driving and trying to keep up with faster cars is poor use of the brakes. People just push the brakes and upset the balance of the car and then expect it to go quickly around a corner. What people should be doing is squeezing the brake progressively and working towards implementing trail braking in their spirited driving. Now, trail braking can be dangerous on the road, so you've got to be careful, but it is a useful skill to have in your repertoire, and if you're trying to keep up with a faster car, it can make the difference. So we're coming up to a tight corner, and by all accounts we're going quite quickly. So what we do is apply the brakes and squeeze, and then we're out the other side. Now that was definitely a little bit of trail braking. If you're trying to keep up with faster cars, that can make the difference. If you want to learn more about how to brake better, click this video up here. It's like my master guide for braking. People also just don't get steering feedback. This kind of ties into the very first point around fear and not understanding what your car can and can't do. But the steering ties into that. People misunderstand certain steering responses as meaning that they're at the limit when they're really, really not. Just because your steering goes a little bit light in a corner doesn't mean that you're understeering or you're at the limit of grip. Some cars, the steering will get a little bit lighter as you reach that threshold of grip and you're at the maximum grip, but you haven't exceeded it yet. you haven't got to the limit yet. So you can still go faster. And people misunderstand it and they think something's going on with the steering, so it must be a bad thing. And they're not as fast as a result. So now the next reason is people don't understand vision at corner entry. At this point, you can tell how tight the corner is based on what you can see. I shall demonstrate. If you see this outside edge, this white line at the edge of the road and the center line in the middle of the road, where they connect tells you how tight the corner is going to be. So even if you've never driven a road before, you can have a great understanding on how fast you can go based on where those two lines connect. So I'll give you an example. If you see over the crest, the two lines connect, that tells me the corner is quite sharp. Now the lines are getting wider, which means the corner is opening up. Just by looking at where the lines connect, your vision tells you how fast you can go into the corner. So even if you've never driven it before, you can drive faster with the knowledge of how tight the corner is. The lines don't connect here, so I know it's a very free and open corner. The lines really tight together, so we know it's going to be a very tight corner. So useful. If you want to know more about vision at corner entry and a whole host of things that can improve your spirited driving, click the video up here for 3 things you don't understand about driving fast. Another issue that I see all the time is that people are just not smooth. They don't take a nice line through the corner, similar to the braking issue, but they jab the brakes too hard, too soon. They don't use their vision to inform what type of corner it will be, which means they take the wrong line, which means they brake too early. A lot of these points will tie together because smoothness comes from being good at all these different elements. By learning all these elements slowly, you will end up becoming smooth. But it's not something that will happen overnight. You have to work for it. If you want a video that's really good about smoothness, click the link up here. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast video. That video has a ton of information on how to actually learn to be smooth and learn to drive better. And the final point is, if you're truly doing all of these elements correctly, then there may just be a mechanical problem with your car. Maybe you've got really cheap brake pads that don't allow you to slow down correctly. Maybe all your suspension is worn out, so when you get into corners like this with a lot of bumps and undulations, the car's not happy and doesn't stick to the ground. Maybe your anti-roll bar links are worn, maybe your bushes across the car are worn, maybe there's some underlying issue that is robbing you of the confidence to drive hard.